I'm Kamali, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world on Newsfeed today. Wet markets in China have been given a bad rap in the COVID-19 outbreak. Should they be banned? We explain what they are. A global rise in domestic violence as a result of lockdown. We focus on some new data out of the UK, which looks at abuse between siblings. Lounge music takes on a whole new meaning, with stars performing to the world right from their living rooms. We pick out some of the good bits. And a pig keeps police busy in the United States. Top of our newsfeed, wet markets. Now, a few months ago, you'd probably never heard of a wet market. Then one was blamed as the source of COVID-19, and now the term is everywhere. So do we really understand what these places are, and should they be banned? Faisal took a look.
This wet market in Wuhan, China, is believed to have been where this COVID-19 outbreak began. The collection of open-air stalls sells fresh seafood, meat, and vegetables. Outside China, they're better known as farmers' markets. Livestock are often slaughtered on site. Some wet markets also sell wild animals. The Wuhan market reportedly offered a range of species, including beavers, porcupines, and even crocodiles. According to 2017 government estimates, the industry is valued at $74 billion and employs over 14 million people. The wildlife food industry is valued at $17 billion. It's an important source of income in the country's impoverished regions. And China isn't the only country where you can buy wild animals for consumption. Similar trades exist in India and in parts of Latin America and Africa. The World Health Organization says 70% of pathogens discovered in the past 50 years have come from animals. After a global call to ban wet markets, China has ended the trading and eating of wild animals. Two cities, Zhuhai and Shenzhen, went further and made the consumption of cats and dogs illegal. The ban means people who rely on the markets for their livelihoods will suffer.
It has been 3 months since the lockdown. When this month ends, it will be 100 days. We can't do anything about it. We don't have any income and business. If it goes on like this, then it will be very difficult for us to survive. We've wasted the year for this.
As the world continues to fight the pandemic, it seems wet markets may be one of the many victims.
Okay, let's take a look at some other COVID-19 related stories that you may have missed. Well, this was the US city of Denver over the weekend. People on the streets demanding the lockdown be lifted, confronted by healthcare workers who are pleading for them to stay at home. Sri Lanka is in discussions about whether or not to hold elections. The parliamentary poll must be held before the 2nd of June. The country has also lifted a daytime curfew in some areas identified as not high risk in an effort to restart the economy. These people are demonstrating against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. As you can see, they are abiding by social distancing rules by standing 6 feet apart. Netanyahu is trying to form a new government after a third inconclusive election in less than a year. There may even have to be a fourth poll. Mr. Netanyahu is also facing charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust.
So you're going to want to stick your finger inside of the mixture of soaps. Make sure you get a lot on there. Then put your finger in it and the virus goes out. This is why it's very important.
And the daughter of Beyonce and Jay-Z recorded this public service announcement about the need to use detergent to wash your hands. Blue Ivy's grandmother, Beyonce's mum, posted it to her Instagram with the words, "Blues PSA." Now, there's been an increase in domestic violence across the world as people find themselves locked at home with their abusers. And now the United Kingdom has released some new data about a form of abuse specifically carried out by women.
Oh, no, please stop. UK police are warning about an increase in what they call Cinderella abuse carried out by sisters and stepsisters on family members. Figures from the London Metropolitan Police suggest that while men are the main perpetrators, domestic abuse carried out by women on their siblings has risen twice as fast in a decade. 641 cases were recorded in 2010, rising to just over 1,300 in 2018. And incidents of abuse by stepsisters and half-sisters have quadrupled from 33 to just over 140 in the same time period.
What it doesn't show is that actually the majority of domestic abuse is a pattern of coercive and controlling behaviour, of which physical abuse is one of the forms of abuse. But what we're not seeing in the rise in female perpetrators, and in particular where they're within the family, is that we're not seeing those patterns of coercive or controlling behaviour. It's more physical incidents, which the police are more likely to be called to, which obviously would lead to an increase in reporting. What it's also highlighting is that, in particular in London, there is a real issue with intergenerational living, which may cause some tensions, which may become abusive context, but it isn't those same forms of power and control as we see in domestic abuse cases.
The National Domestic Abuse Helpline in the UK has reported a 25% spike in calls since the lockdown. Campaigners from Counting Dead Women have identified at least 16 domestic abuse-related killings since the restrictions were imposed in late March.
Women are unable to flee from abusive partners, abusive perpetrators. So they are essentially trapped in their own homes with perpetrators with no escape. I think some of the media around it has sort of suggested that it is, coronavirus stress related. But what we know is that the domestic abuse will have been happening for a long time within those relationships before those women were killed by their partners. On average, the service users who use solace services have been in abusive relationships for 6.5 years. So the COVID-19 situation has meant that women are more likely to be trapped with abusive partners with no means of escape.
To mitigate this, British Home Secretary Priti Patel has recently announced a campaign called #YouAreNotAlone. It aims to support survivors by allocating nearly $2.5 million to bolster domestic violence helplines and online support platforms.
It's a very small amount of funding to give to support an entire sector. It equates to essentially 80 pence for every victim survivor who reported domestic abuse to the police last year. So you can see that from that it's not an adequate sum of money. It's a sector that's been woefully underfunded centrally for many, many years.
The government says it's also looking at safe and appropriate accommodation options, a suggestion that's divided campaigners.
It's incredibly generous of hotel chains to offer their rooms, but such an offer is not straightforward. Perpetrators have ingenious ways of tracking women down, and it's essential that women have access to safe, secure, specialist refuge accommodation.
For as long as the lockdown continues, people stuck at home with their abusers remain at risk.
Okay, let's go around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Monday. In a potentially important ruling from Australia, the government there says that Facebook and Google must pay Australian media companies if their platforms share their content. The tech companies will be fined if they fail to comply. The money coming from the firms will be a share of the advertising revenue that they make selling ads around content created by Australian media. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and her husband Harry say they will no longer give stories to 4 British tabloids. The papers are accused of printing lies about the couple. They have also quit Britain and quit the royal family because of their treatment by the press. Now, more details emerge every day from frontline health professionals about how they're dealing with the pandemic. Here are some of their stories.
One of the hardest moments was having to see a family member of a COVID patient say goodbye over an iPad rooms away. That was a tough one. I can't imagine how hard it would be to be saying goodbye and you can't see your loved one and they're gone. I'd say the hardest moment was having to put a breathing tube in my patient who could no longer breathe for herself. And after the breathing tube went in, we called the family, and the husband, of course, couldn't visit her because of visitor restrictions at the hospital. So I had to put him on a phone and hold the phone to her ear as he told her that he loved her so much. And then I had to wipe away her tears because she was crying.
It's hard. It's hard in lots of ways. Since it's a new virus, we don't have any experience with it. For most diseases, I'm used to seeing it and taking care of it. And this, I don't have any starting place. I know what I'm hearing from New York. I've read all of the papers, it seems like, but no one knows what the correct answers are. So there's a huge amount of uncertainty, and people are really, really sick.
I had a patient fall out of bed today, and I had to call his wife and tell her, and she couldn't come see him, even though she pleaded and begged to come see him.
The hardest thing in all of this has been taking care of fellow healthcare providers. It's really hits home, and it's really scary when you see someone that could be you coming in and now you're taking care of them. It's also hitting home that once healthcare providers start getting sick, who is going to be taking care of the public?
There's been a lot of fear over supplies and whether we'll run out. And then obviously there's a fear that we will see patients and not be able to do everything we normally can to help save patients' lives.
Well, celebrities and the United Nations put on an event over the weekend designed to bring the world together. Take a look.
Everyone, it's Black Coffee, and I'm out here with Delilah Montaldo, and
we are Milky Chance. We hope you're doing good. We hope you're at home.
My name is Lisa Mishra, and I'm singing to you today all the way from India.
Lady Gaga, and today I'm so happy that we are one world together at home.
If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow. To get my fair shares of abuse. Saying we're gonna vent our frustration. We can dance, everything's out of control. We can dance, doing it in cold war. We can dance.
And last up, we showed you a policeman in America escorting some ducks last week, and now we have a sequel, sort of. This happened in Stamford, Connecticut, a runaway pig leading 3 offers in a 45-minute chase. Thankfully for this porker, it wasn't destined for the spit. No, this one ended up with a bin being thrown on top of it. It will now be reunited with its owner. Okay, that's going to do from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. You'll find me as always at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel and follow me on Twitter. Stay at home, wash your hands, Ev Dekal. See you tomorrow.